Okay, this is part 5 of Wisdom and Womanhood. In this video, we're going to talk about dating and marriage, because the choices you make while you're dating and when you're married will play an obviously huge part in determining the amount of joy you will get out of your reproductive design. And I'm going to say from the outset that while all of this is going to be based on biology and the roles that men and women were designed to fulfill, I'm also aware that every person's experience with dating and marriage is going to be individual and unique. And what is best for one person is not likely to be what is best for someone else, okay? I'm not trying to set up any strict dating and marriage rules, because even if I were, there are exceptions to rules sometimes, right? But what I'm going to present is based on biology, and so we can kind of come up with some general strategies and guidelines that should be helpful in most circumstances. So, very quickly, before we get started, let's recap, shall we? You will recall from parts 3 and 4 that testosterone improves a man physically. The physical changes that turn a boy into a man also promote the development of masculine qualities and characteristics that make him capable of improving the world around him, which includes a woman and her children. We talked about how women are not well suited to meet the challenges of the real world. They are the product of estrogen, not testosterone. And consequently, there are many things that make women the weaker sex in this world, something women do not like to admit, but is nevertheless biologically true. You will also recall from part 3 that a woman has an undeniable, inescapable biological clock. A woman is born with a certain number of eggs, and that number decreases throughout her life, and she will never produce more. Really, once a woman hits her mid-30s, and the remaining eggs are more likely to have genetic abnormalities. So a woman's time of prime fertility is short. It's just like the egg itself. Okay, remember how we said that the egg only has about a 12 to 24-hour window of opportunity to become fertilized, right? But that the sperm can last much longer, up to 5 days. A woman's reproductive lifespan is the same. Okay, it's much shorter than a man's. She only has about 15 to 20 years of prime fertility. And some of you might be like, well, 15 to 20 years, that's a lot of time. But if you think about it, if you're watching this video and you're older than 16 years old, you're already at least halfway to the end of your reproductive prime. And the years ahead are going to go by in the blink of an eye. Those eggs are inside follicles, and the number of follicles also decreases throughout a woman's life, and she will never produce more of those either. The follicles are responsible for producing estrogen, and estrogen is what maintains a woman's youthfulness and beauty. So when those follicles start to rapidly die off when a woman is in her mid-30s, she's going to age significantly, making her less attractive to men and less capable of meeting the physical demands of caring for young children. In parts 3 and 4, we talked about how a good man improves a woman by making her a mother. We defined matrimony as the making of a mother, and we talked about how a spontaneous vaginal delivery and breastfeeding make a woman physiologically mature, and how the oxytocin hit that comes with those experiences furthers her emotional development. Okay, it sets a new standard in her life for how she is to love others. She goes from being primarily someone who receives to someone who also gives. Okay, a woman is not physiologically mature until she's had a baby, and she's not fully emotionally mature without that oxytocin hit. Lastly, we talked about oxytocin's role in pair bonding, which happens in both men and women when oxytocin is released into the brain during intimate relationships, and to a greater degree during sexual intercourse, okay? But it expresses itself differently in each sex, and that's because women have higher levels of oxytocin than men to begin with, and because oxytocin has different effects on behavior in men and women. In men, it increases the desire to provide for and protect the people with whom they have deep and close relationships, and to compete against others who would threaten those relationships, actually. And in women, it produces a strong sense of loyalty, commitment, and devotion that a woman feels towards others, okay, especially towards her sexual partner. We obviously covered a lot more in the biology, but from just those points alone, okay, it should be very obvious that a woman needs a man to help her fulfill her design and to experience a fullness of joy. Not just any kind of man, okay? A woman needs a good man. So in the first part of this video, we're going to build out a dating strategy to help you find one. Okay, it's going to be your own little hunting mission of sorts. And strategy is really important. And it's important to come up with a strategy before you start dating. Okay, because this is one area of your life where if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, dating is very serious business. There are a lot of choices to make, and those choices have life-altering consequences. And once you start dating, you're going to be fighting against some very strong biological and emotional impulses that, quite frankly, override critical thinking and good judgment. Okay, you really want to build out a strategy, and you want to cautiously update that strategy as new information presents itself. Okay, notice that cautiously is bolded, italicized, underlined, and capitalized. Okay, don't make changes to your plan unless you have some really good reasons to. So strategy number 1 is know what a good man looks like. Now, we can get into specifics here, and we will, but in general, let's go back to this slide because you want to look for a man whose world looks like this. Okay, why? Because the more a man's world looks like this, the greater the probability that the man is actually good. He will have achievements in his life that will tell you a ton about him. You can find all of these qualities in him. But let's talk about some other things that you can tell about a man whose world looks like this, okay? You can tell he has a transcendent purpose, something he is working towards that is bigger than himself. We've talked a lot about how men are designed to be constant, but men are also human. And when the real world is beating down on them, a transcendent purpose is something that they can stay centered on. A world like that requires effort to build. So if a man has built that kind of world, he's much more likely to have a good work ethic. He'll have strength, not just physical strength, but strength of character. He'll be determined, right? Because building a world like this, it's not without obstacles, right? So you can be pretty confident that he's developed some determination in overcoming those obstacles. Patience, that's a good one. We've talked a lot about things that are proper, okay? Proper use, proper roles. One thing that should also be proper is timing, okay? A good man will consider doing things at the most appropriate and most beneficial times. Stability, that's really important. A woman is going to need someone to lean on as she goes through her many changes. And the stability of the environment that a man has built around himself is a reflection of his own mental and emotional stability. It shows consideration for others. This is extremely evident, okay? It's apparent from all of the sacrifices that he's made for a wife and children that he doesn't even know yet, right? Wisdom. We've talked a lot about that in this video series, and it's just as important for a man to have it as it is for a woman, okay? If not more so. Let's go back and revisit the definition for wisdom for just a second to make that point. The definition says, the right use or exercise of knowledge, the choice of laudable ends, and of the best means to accomplish them. Okay, women can't be good without wisdom, and men can't be good without it either. If a man's world looks like that last slide, you know that he's working towards laudable ends, honorable ends, and his life is a testament to the fact that he has both acquired and employed the required knowledge to achieve those ends. Overall, that kind of man is going to be good, and he is going to be capable of providing everything you will need to bless your family, okay? Financially, physically, emotionally, characteristically. Another super important criteria that a man should meet is he should encourage you to be better, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the marriage section. Strategy number 2 is know what to avoid. Obviously, you want to avoid a guy who is opposite of what we just talked about, right? Or any guy who is missing any part of what we just talked about, okay? It has to be a package deal because having just 1 or 2 of those good masculine qualities isn't enough. If a guy's financially stable, doesn't mean he's going to be emotionally stable. And if he has a good deal of physical strength, doesn't mean he's going to have strength of character, okay? You don't want a man who is still working on himself in any significant way, okay? Because a man who will have a more difficult time providing the environment you and your children will need to thrive. And I'm going to make a prediction here. You're going to meet a guy who isn't completely established, but you really like him and you really believe in him because he says he has all of these goals to be able to provide for you someday. But you need to realize that that's gambling, okay? That's a high-risk option. And why gamble? Okay, the fact of the matter is that goals are not the same as achievements. So if you come across a guy who wants a serious relationship before he is able to provide for you, pass, okay? Because a good man will realize that a good woman needs that insulated space to thrive in her role as a wife and mother. And if a man offers you something less than that, he's not the good man you're looking for, okay? He's not improving your situation. He's trying to improve his. And he won't even end up doing that, actually. Some other things that I want to mention specifically are you should avoid men who are rebellious to good things. Sometimes women are improperly attracted to, like, quote unquote, bad boys, okay? Men who engage in rebellious behavior. And this is because rebellion can come across as strength. And women get this idea that they can somehow be a good influence on the guy, right? And turn him around. But this rarely works because remember, men don't change. They stay pretty constant in general, okay? So you really want to avoid guys like that. Another thing you want to avoid is any guy who is needy. A woman's life is full of change, okay? She cannot be counted on to be constant. So if you meet a guy that says he needs you in his life, pass, okay? Any guy who relies on a woman for strength and support can never provide the strength and support that you will need as you go through your many changes. Strength and support in a relationship have to be found in the constancy of masculinity. If you want to feel needed, have children, okay? Because I promise your kids will be needy enough. They will rely on you to take care of their immediate needs on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis. Make sure that the man you choose doesn't add to that burden because he will not be good. And you will actually have a very difficult time not resenting him for adding to that burden. You want to avoid men who are untried, okay? If they haven't overcome some serious challenges or setbacks in their life, pass, okay? A good man will look for challenges and opportunities for growth. And that doesn't mean that you have to look for a guy whose life has been like a train wreck, but you don't want a guy who avoids challenges, okay? Or who's afraid of obstacles, or who just doesn't generally push himself to constantly improve. A man like that is not fulfilling his design, and so he can't be good. You also don't want a guy who is ruled by his passions, okay? No addictions, no habitual negative behavior. A good man will be disciplined, okay? And he won't be given to any kind of behavior that doesn't serve him well. Strategy number 3, be serious and be quick. This is because of oxytocin and the role it plays in pair bonding, okay? Because women very easily form feelings of commitment and loyalty and devotion in close relationships, a woman's first serious relationship is meant to be the one she commits to for life. Remember how in part 3, when the first sperm penetrates the outer layer of an egg, the proteins in that outer layer change and make the egg impenetrable to any other sperm, okay? That's exactly what the release of oxytocin in intimate relationships is meant to do to a woman's heart. Once a woman has established her first intimate bond with a man, that release of oxytocin is meant to seal her heart off to anyone else. And remember, an intimate relationship doesn't have to be sexual, okay? So when you're dating, you want to stay away from long, intense relationships that aren't moving towards marriage, because if you pair bond with a guy who you don't end up marrying, you won't be able to give your complete loyalty, devotion, and commitment to the guy that you do end up marrying. Part of your heart will always be with that other guy, and that leads to a lot of misery. You know what happens to an egg if it accidentally gets fertilized by 2 sperm? It dies. So when you're dating, you need to remember that you are looking for a good man from whom you can receive, but dating is not when you actually receive, okay? Marriage is when you receive. Don't receive while you're dating. Don't date anyone who isn't ready for marriage, okay? If he's not the ideal, don't date him. And if you date a guy who you think is the ideal, and then you find out he isn't, don't date him again. Don't date just for fun. Okay, remember that joy is the target, not fun. Dating is serious business because of the fact that a young woman can form strong emotional attachments to any guy she dates. When you're dating, you need to remember that you're on a mission to find that good man, okay, not to have fun. Avoid close, intimate physical contact while you're dating. There are actually a lot of reasons for this, right? Unintended pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases. But one of the most important and the most overlooked reason is you want to avoid that release of oxytocin, okay? You want to avoid that pair bonding until you're in a committed relationship with a good man. And you want to avoid emotionally deep relationships for the same reason, okay? Remember that an intimate relationship doesn't have to be sexual or physical. Strategy number 4 is to narrow the field. We want to make this search quick, so let's talk about ways that we can eliminate candidates who we know aren't going to be what we're looking for, okay? You want to look for a good man in places where you think a good man might be. Have you ever given that any thought? You should, because he's not going to be going to parties and bars on the weekend, okay? A good man is going to be out improving the world. He'll be active in good organizations. He'll be working. He'll be productive. He will be involved in his community, and he will be learning and constantly improving. So go involve yourself in those things that will increase your chances of finding a good man. Another way to find a good man is to involve other people who know what you're looking for in your search. We don't do this a whole lot in our culture anymore, but arranged marriages, they weren't a terrible idea, okay? If your parents and other people around you know what a good man looks like, have them make recommendations that will help you narrow your search, and at least take those recommendations into consideration. You should use a guy's age to narrow the field, because men are probably not going to be what you're looking for until they're about 25 years old. If you're in your late teens, that probably sounds like a huge age gap, okay? But this is a very important criteria. I'm even going to put it in bold letters here. I have a few reasons for this, and the first one is biological. Human brains are not considered fully developed until they undergo a process called myelination. And I'm not going to go into an in-depth explanation of that, but it's a process that makes nerve cells work optimally, okay? And the last areas of the brain to go through this process are the areas that have to do with critical thinking and good judgment and good decision-making. That process isn't usually completed until a person is about 25 years old. Teenagers and young adults in their 20s literally do not have the physical capacity to think as rationally as they would if they were about 25 for this reason. And remember how I said that testosterone increases confidence? Well, unfortunately for men, this is kind of an unfavorable combination when they're young, because that increased confidence they experience as their testosterone levels go up overlaps with the period of time when their brains are still developing. And so they're not the greatest at making the best judgment calls, okay? They can be very prone to making stupid decisions and engaging in very risky behavior. This is actually why many car rental companies won't let you rent a car until you're 25 years old. It's also why a man younger than 25 typically pays more for car insurance than a young woman of the same age. It's because the car rental and insurance companies know that statistically, because of his biology, the young man is more of a risk. You don't want to tie yourself down to that. In general, you should be looking for someone who is at least 25, because it's more likely he'll be able to make better decisions compared to someone who's younger than 25. It's not a guarantee, just like any other singular characteristic isn't a guarantee that he's going to be marriage material, but it definitely increases the chances. Another reason why men aren't marriage material until they're about 25 is that a man needs time to gain everything he needs to care for a woman, right? How much time do you think that a man might need to do that? There should be some immediately obvious answers to that question. It's not like a man is going to hit peak testosterone and fertility levels at 18 or 19 and immediately be everything he needs to be to give to a woman, right? Men need time to become that. Remember in the biology video how a man isn't born with any sperm, right? How part of his coming into maturity is acquiring something that he can then give to someone else. And that is such a great metaphor for the development of character in a man. He has to have time to mature and to become someone who is capable of giving to a woman. So let a man go through those experiences and gain that wisdom on his own. And then look for the good man who emerges from those experiences. If you're still in your late teens or early 20s, This is going to kind of sound a little drastic, but you might have to pass on experiences that young women your age look forward to, okay, like homecoming or prom or just other close friendships that you might have with young men your own age, okay? And I know some people are out there saying that, well, that's just crazy and unnecessary, but honestly, that's actually how important it is to avoid pair bonding to someone who is not marriage material. And guys that age are just not marriage material. One last thing that goes along with this, and that I alluded to in part 3, is the fact that young women should not rule out dating older men. We have this idea in our culture that dating an older man is like weird, right? Or just somehow less than dating a younger man. But that's not always true. When you're thinking about who can best provide for you and your children, what should you value the most? Many times the wisdom, experience, material wealth, and strength of character found in older men is way more valuable than what you will find in younger men. Personally, I think that's why men have such a relatively long reproductive lifespan, right? It gives good men the most time and the greatest opportunity to build up good, positive character traits and to then use them in improving the lives of others. That's actually very good design, and it's something that younger women don't adequately value or take advantage of. Strategy number 5 is start early. This goes right along with the last takeaway from part 2. The most joy requires you to take part in the design early. This is true for both men and women, okay? But when it comes to like what taking part in the design early looks like, it's going to be different for each sex. In general, men should take part in the design by improving themselves and preparing to date as early as possible. But they really shouldn't start dating seriously until they are ready to fully provide and care for a woman. For women, it's the opposite. A woman needs a good man to fulfill her design, and she doesn't have any time to waste in trying to find one, right? Because she's working against that biological clock. She has limited time and opportunity to become a mother and fulfill her design. She has limited time and opportunity to attract a good man who can help her do that. And she has limited time and opportunity to use the energy and vitality of her youth to meet the demands of raising children. Our current society would have you believe that you should spend your late teens and 20s pursuing a career or traveling the world or having any number of other experiences, and that you've got all the time in the world to find the right guy and have children. But that's not true. Biologically, that's just not true. And it's really hard to overstate the potential for character improvement in a woman when she gets that oxytocin hit. If women knew the benefit that experience could be to them and to other people around them, they would not put that off. Having children and getting that hit of oxytocin while a woman is young gives her more years in her adult life as someone who not only receives, but who also gives. And that greater capacity to love makes her better able to make good decisions in regard to others, okay? It makes her better able to make moral decisions for a longer time as an adult. And that's a very important part of obtaining the most joy in life, because remember, joy is cumulative. So now let's talk about marriage. We talked about the proper roles of men and women in part 4, and I briefly mentioned that because of a woman's dispositions to change and to receive, she can very easily become her own worst enemy. And so we need to talk about how that happens and about some strategies that you can use to experience the most joy in marriage, okay? People have a lot of preconceived ideas about marriage. They have expectations for marriage that are based on things that they've been taught in that land of illusion, right? Instead of biological design. And then when their marriage turns out to be something other than what they expected, there's a lot of misery because their perceptions were inaccurate. So it's very important for both men and women to understand how their biology and dispositions will affect their long-term relationship. Because men have a disposition to stay constant, women don't have to endure many surprises once they're married if they've chosen a good man. A good man is likely to stay constant in that good masculine nature. A woman will only be disappointed in her decision to marry a man if her assessment of whether or not he was actually good was incorrect to begin with, or if she settled for something less than what she knew a good man should be. That's why it's so important to set that standard of a good man so high when you're dating. Men are not as fortunate. Marriage is much more of a roll of the dice for men because women change. For a man, there's absolutely no guarantee that a woman he dates will remain the same, right? In fact, she's guaranteed to change, right? Her design demands that she change. And knowing that, both men and women should be able to have much more realistic expectations about what marriage is going to look like. Here are some very inconvenient truths that women do not like to talk about. In marriage, what a man is going to get is someone who changes. And what does that mean? It means that the woman will be very complicated through her prime reproductive years. She's likely to be moody, emotional, irritable, and extremely unpleasant to be around. Any physical beauty that she might have and that a man might find attractive will be short-lived because physical beauty peaks early and fades relatively quickly. And a woman's changing physical, emotional, and mental states place an automatic burden on a man for the rest of your life. He won't just be trying to ensure his own survival anymore. He'll be responsible for yours too, and for any children that come along. And that will be all the more difficult in any kind of a worst-case scenario. A man is also going to get someone who is designed to receive, which means she's going to be the weaker sex, right? She's going to be someone who is lacking something that she's made to receive from a man. And that's not a bad thing all by itself, but it can be. It can be bad if a woman's disposition to receive just kind of goes crazy, right? And it becomes a disposition to take. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. There's a big difference between receiving and taking. And if a woman incorrectly sees a man's responsibility to take care of her as something he owes to her, that can very quickly lead her to become ungrateful and selfish and lazy. And she can even go so far as to refuse to receive what her husband has to give her. When you put all of these things together, you realize that it is an act of service for a good man to take responsibility for you. It's not a walk in the park. It's a sacrifice, a huge sacrifice. And how you respond to that level of sacrifice will be a key factor in how much joy you and your husband and your children will experience in life. And I hope that from our discussion on dating and marriage so far, you realize that in looking for a good man, you're not looking for an equal. You're looking for someone who is better than you, not just a little better, but like a lot better. You're going for a very high caliber man. And if you go to all of the trouble of finding one, someone who's driven and capable of improving the world around him, and if you're honestly interested in finding ways to improve yourself, you should look to your husband to help you do that. Here are some complementary truths about men that women also do not like to talk about. And they are based on the idea that a man is designed to improve a woman. You see that at fertilization, where a man's sperm improves an egg that would otherwise be wasted. You see that in matrimony, when a man makes a woman a mother. And you should see it in the guidance and instruction that a good man can give to a woman in the development of her character. Good character in a man is perfectly suited to complement the changing and receiving nature of a woman, even its negative aspects. Where a woman is complicated, moody, emotional, irritable, and unpleasant, a good man provides guidance, stoicism, logic, and correction. Knowing that a woman's physical beauty will fade, a good man cultivates an inner beauty in a woman that endures. A good man protects and provides for a woman because he knows she needs protection and provision in the real world. A good man provides strength to you, and he uses his confidence, assertiveness, determination, and other masculine qualities to insulate you from the chaos outside of the home. And that insulated space gives a woman the opportunity to develop selflessness and sacrifice, especially through childbearing. A good man's example will lead a woman to be productive and ready to receive the good things he's capable of giving to her. A good man helps a woman reach her full potential in so many ways. This slide has on it some things that a good woman will do in her relationship with her husband and in her home. And I was going to read through these bullet points, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Instead, I think it would be better for you to pause this video and read through them on your own at a very slow pace, and ask yourself how you might do each of these things, and imagine the kind of environment that a good woman has the ability to create for the people she will love the most. I think that a deep contemplation of the good found in each of these bullet points will be far more persuasive and inspiring to you than my reading them out loud. So go ahead and pause this video, and then press play when you're ready to come back. Because men are designed to derive joy from improving the world around them, when a woman improves by gratefully, joyfully receiving everything a good man has to give, she becomes a treasure to him. A woman should be one of the greatest sources of joy for a man because she can uniquely receive what a man has to offer and partner with him to improve the world around him in a way that he would not otherwise be able to. That kind of partnership is priceless to a good man. It improves generations to come and helps him reach his greatest present influence. When a woman's disposition to change becomes a disposition to not only change, but to also improve, it's in receiving and in improving that a woman fulfills her design and fully complements a man. It's how she becomes good, and it's how both men and women experience the most joy in their reproductive design. In the next video, the final video, we're going to talk about things that matter most. There are things about you that transcend your biology, so I hope that you come back and wrap up the series with part 6.